Alright, so I've spent a lot of time covering near future or recent past in the games I've been covering, so I figured, screw it, let's turn the clock back quite a bit so I can cover one of my favorite games in a trip through 15th century Bohemia as we visit Warhorse Studios' Kingdom Come Deliverance. Oh lordy, this game holds a very special place in my heart, and there's a big reason behind that. It didn't let me down. Now, I know, that's not a very high bar, but let me explain. I suffer from hype, and I mean like badly. If I get excited about a game, I'm gonna stick it up on a pedestal and it's gonna fall over and crush me every single time, regardless of how good it is. I've solved this problem now in life by simply avoiding any information about a game or a movie as soon as I take an interest in it. I spent 3 years avoiding Cyberpunk trailers and demos. I didn't watch anything about Red Dead 2 or Top Gun Maverick, and that's worked for me. But Kingdom Come Deliverance was very different. The game first hit my radar in late summer of 2016 when I saw a video the devs published explaining what games often get wrong about weapons and armor in the medieval setting, and I was instantly fascinated. It wasn't really the time period I was interested in, but I had always found combat systems in games lacking, mostly in shooters that allow you to riddle someone with holes before they succumb to the excess daylight inside their bodies. I dove in immediately, tearing through the updates and the videos, breaking down the project. It was an easy buy for me, and even playing it day one on a console, which I stress is not the preferred experience, I was hooked immediately. I find myself attracted to experiences that kick the crap out of me. I fell in love with Siege, Total War, wrestling, and later in life, Kingdom Come Deliverance. I don't want to scare you away, but I'm not sure if I can call this game a fun experience. More of a rewarding one. There's not a lot of experiences in gaming that will kick the crap out of you in so many various ways. Honestly, I was working a full-time job, racing once a month, building a car, and going to college when this game came out, and this was the hardest thing about my day at any given point. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's break it down in our usual fashion so I can do my best to show you why you should buy this bad day simulator, which means spoilers ahead. I'm going to do my best not to spoil everything about the main story, and I think I've done an okay job of leaving plenty of surprises for you to enjoy along the way. But I can't promise I was as generous with DLC, although I did avoid most side missions. So consider yourself warned. So, in a rare twist for me, I think the gameplay in this game might be my main selling point. Not to say the story isn't good, because it is, but damn, the gameplay and difficulty in this game were just a huge plus for me. I don't have an elegant way to put this, so here it is. This game takes itself very seriously, and if you treat it like a game, it's gonna fuck you with the long dong of reality. Oh, you're in your first 2 hours of the game with a worn short sword and a ratty gambeson, neither of which you're skilled enough to repair, and you're taking on a longsword wielding enemy clad in shiny new plate armor? Well, congratulations, you get to spend the next 20 minutes desperately trying not to die, while this guy laughs at you before landing the one and only shot he needs to pierce through your main character syndrome. Get fucked, you level 4 noob. Here's the cool part though. For the most part, you won't notice yourself getting better, or at least it's not likely that you will, as it happens very naturally over the course of the game. The biggest jumps in your own performance that you'll see will come from training with battle-worn soldiers like Bernard and Robard. Outside of that though, the only times I noticed how dramatic the difference between your early and late game abilities was starting a new game directly from a late game save, and I love this. Henry will learn and improve just like you will. From a kid who couldn't take out a stick to a hardened warrior out to destroy those who have wronged you and stolen your sword. With single opponents hardly ever becoming more than a few counters away from tasting the tip of your steel, or, if you're an asshole, the face of your mace. Jesus, Henry, it's a mercy kill. Holy fuck! Now, important note here. I said single opponents will hardly ever be a problem. Well, you know what happens when one well-armed and trained knight fights 4 well-armed and trained knights? Well, you get a serious appreciation for footwork as you do your best to maneuver so your enemies stay in front of you as you try to chip away at them as you play the age-old game of I touch you and you don't touch me, which is a lot harder with 5 swords involved. This is one of the few games that I spent most of my time avoiding fights, not picking them. Especially before you get some decent armor, any wound can be deadly as you can't heal during a fight unless you saw it coming and chugged a Lazarus potion right before it started. But if you get cut, there's no applying bandages during a fight, and you can bleed out before you have a chance to figure out what's going on. You know what else is really cool about the combat in this game? You're not stuck playing like I did, even if I recommend it. I had a friend buy the game, and I was chatting with them about their experience, and I was surprised to find out they hardly got involved in the swordplay at all. When the challenge was too great, he took a different path. Where I refused to turn to crime and instead went in search of work like a main character, he took on grave robbing and thievery, getting good with a bow and stealth, choosing to backstab and sneak his way through encounters rather than stand and fight. This did something for me, because just as the swordplay had turned him away, the archery had turned me away. We later attributed this perspective to him staying on a mouse and keyboard while I played the game on a controller even after switching to PC. But this conversation inspired me as I was starting my recording playthrough and decided to learn the bow. And at first, I hated it. But something happened. Slowly but surely, I figured it out as I became the Rabbit Slayer 9000. I took the time and put in the work to learn a new skill, and now I sometimes even consider firing a single arrow at my enemies before fighting 6 of them with my longsword like I do anyway. Did you really expect me to change as a person? From fistfights to on-road ambushes, tracking down bandit camps, duels, organized tournaments, boss fights, and full-scale combat, there's a little bit of everything for Henry to take part in. The game may punish you for playing foolishly, but that doesn't mean you can't have some fun once you've reached a higher skill level than those around you. Thick armor and a staunch defense is still the best way to go against multiple opponents, but you can try pulling out a short sword and flowing around strikes to pepper your enemy rather than devastating counters. Also, using a mace to counter filthy fucking peasants who think that there's some strength in numbers never gets old. After spending a decent amount of time with each weapon in the game so I can write this, I've really come to love the mace, especially the high-level ceremonial mace. There's something satisfying about the thunk you get whacking away at enemies, armor be damned. Overall, the gameplay experience in this game has some of the highest highs, and half of them are getting put on skates by some dude with a fucking stick. I love every new playthrough as I relearn my swordplay, and I think you'll enjoy your first run through it if you're willing to stick it out. There's no bad way to play, so get stuck in and have some fun.
So, let's get to it.
Well, I couldn't wait too long to tell you the story of Henry the Blacksmith, so here we are, right into spoilers. I'll make my usual attempt to skip through enough of the game that you'll still have some surprises going in, but you should expect some big spoilers. You've been warned. Henry of Skalitz has this interesting trait where your first hour with him will really change your perspective on what kind of character he's going to be, as you're given the choice to mold him through not only your own choices, but the skills that will allow you to make better choices. Let me explain. One of the first things you'll do in this game is be sent by your father to get charcoal for the forge, and he'll tell you to retrieve the money for said charcoal from Kunesh, who owes him for the tools he provided. I think how you deal with Kunesh at the beginning of the game will go on to set the tone for the rest of your playthrough. On my very first playthrough, I lost the opening fight to him, which meant that helping my friends throw turds at the Deutsch's house wasn't a choice, it was a necessity because I needed their help and I wanted to get that one back. There's options though, as you could have also borrowed a lockpick and used that to get in, but lockpicking is hard in this game and I don't have the skills to go that route. On new playthroughs though, I don't have this issue as I'm better now and I can just win the fist fight, meaning I throw crap at the Deutsch's house for fun rather than out of need. What? Throwing shit is fun. My point stands, however, is whatever route you take to get this task done will likely shape how you play the game. You were strong enough to win your first fight against a larger opponent? Well, you'll likely take on fights head-on, even against bad odds. You lost the first fight, you'll either dedicate yourself to training, or you'll look to the sneaky arts of lockpicking and stealth, or maybe even try to gather support to overwhelm your enemies through numbers. All things that will later come into the main quest, and I love a good tutorial. So speaking of which, how do we get from the tutorial to the true world? Well, you watch your friends and family die before escaping, just to work your way back to Skalitz and bury your parents, which ends up with you getting your own ass kicked because, you went to a town where a war happened, and there's still people there. Look, I said Henry was the main character, I never said he was very bright, but don't worry, at least your mission to bury your parents was sort of successful.
Still, it's a great shame your parents are buried in unconsecrated ground. That means purgatory for them.
Shit. So where do we go from here? Well, Henry will be accepted into the garrison after a little training and scrapping with the Lungyord Capon, who will one day rule this land. You'll be assigned to his personal escort in what becomes quite a fun time as you'll rescue the young lord from the Cuman horde, who capture him after he bolts on you chasing a boar that he sucks at. This leads into what's essentially the first step in a long road to the end, as you'll be rewarded with a horse and sent as part of the troop dispatched to investigate the attack at Neuhof. From here on, you'll spend quite a long time investigating the raid, tracking down different people and leads as you try to piece together how and why this happened. This will take you over huge swaths of the map as you'll really get use out of your new horse. This really feels like a whole new scale has been added to the game as your autonomy increases significantly. Side note, I would recommend taking this time to learn how to read, from the scribe in Ushitz. The Neuhof investigation will lead you to finding an encampment called Pribyslavitz, where the bandits are holed up, which becomes a whole new deal in itself as you're sent to scout the area before you'll be launching an attack on it in the company of Radzig. Technically, you can sneak in, but I never found much success in that route, so I went for the alternate route of stealing a human uniform and bullshitting my way through the camp to find out as much as I could, inside of which you can actually trigger a pretty neat cutscene. When you report back to Radzig, your answers will affect how many men he calls on to lead the attack and how he does it, which, getting this right, is important. The battle for Pribyslavitz is fun, but it does show that there isn't a good way to mix one-on-one combat in a large-scale fight, but it's fine because after fighting through multiple layers of defense of the camp, which is actually a kind of true-to-life shit show, you'll see and chase after Runt and show him what you've learned in search of the sword he stole from you.
Henry!
Is a man of focus.
Oh, where's my fucking sword?
Commitment.
What did you do with my sword?
The sheer fucking will.
Tell me, do you hear me? Tell me what you've done with it!
After the battle, you'll find a new clue in fake money that was taken from the enemy's supplies you seized. Following the money is not a new concept, as you'll again trek across the country in search of answers relating to how the money is being made and where it's being sent. You'll go all over the place, dealing with shady smiths, a knight sent to investigate the same thing you are, random people tied up in the process. Hell, you'll even cure a town of plague in the process, for which they're mostly grateful. This will lead to a whole new set of problems where you'll need to infiltrate the fucking church. Wait, the church? Yep, the church as a novice in order to find one of the bandits, which is admittedly a very good mission as it forces you way out of your comfort zones, making you vulnerable, but it's not one that I look forward to, as you'll spend a lot of time just being undercover rather than doing exciting undercover work. It's a whole thing, but eventually, with enough snooping, you'll find your man and get the info you need to get back to the mercenaries, who will give you the location of the camp and the special die you need for the entrance, if you can talk your way through not having the belongings of the guy. Unfortunately, if you don't have the silver tongue, they'll find your story lacking and you'll have to fight your way through and find their camp on your own with info gathered from their belongings and nearby innkeepers. Vranik doesn't go particularly well, as you'll end up captured, and after the escape, the news you bring back about the camp doesn't exactly inspire confidence, but you will do what you must as you launch an attack on the camp. Unfortunately, this doesn't go well, as while you're fighting, the city of Talmberg will be captured from the inside, and you'll start yet another project to get it back. The Talmberg siege is actually a ton of fun, since you've proven yourself so capable, you'll be given a ton to do. After an early failed night raid, which you can't win regardless of what you do, don't try to redo it 30 times, you'll settle in for a siege and be sent off to bolster the camp with food and beer for the troops, as well as potions to keep them awake on duty while pulling double shifts. You'll gather pitch you'll need for the battle and go through an entirely different quest helping to heal all the injured people at the monastery so the doctor can come out and attend the people at our camp. Oh, and if you're like me and can't bite your tongue, you might get thrown in jail as part of this quest. It's a different thing. You'll also track down a priest for the camp, which is his own whole thing. You end up finding him in the woods, which is just annoying to get to. It's a weird whole thing, blah, blah, blah. Your work isn't done, however, is when the mining engineer has no idea how to build a trebuchet, who would have thought. You'll find Conrad Kaiser, who will do much better job of building one. After dealing with an attack at the camp that I may or may not have been drunk during, you'll be given the honor of firing the first shots to kick off the 2-day bombardment. After the 2 days and clearing some remnants of the enemy force hiding in the woods around the camp, there's nothing left to do but attack, which leads to an admittedly anticlimactic ending after a pretty good final fight. But this anticlimactic ending is actually par for the course, as it follows the rules of civility, and sets us up nicely for a sequel at the very least. Kingdom Come 2 was confirmed basically when the game was a success, and so it's nice to know that Henry and Capon riding off into the sunset isn't the end of this game, but the start of the next adventure I'm hoping we'll get to enjoy sooner rather than later, although no date has been announced. I believe in you, Warhorse.
Zastupi device potoki vina, nes venis nes semezis viva, nes venis nes pescas es lavi, citali piem nes te
DLC is so hit or miss now, with games seeming to offer less and less while charging more money. Thankfully, this isn't the case here, as every expansion you pay for will add hours of fresh and fun content. Nothing feels like repackaged, cut content, or a lazy cash grab. It's refreshing. We've got 4 large DLC to cover, so let's break it down. We'll be starting with the last expansion released in A Woman's Lot, which means following the story of the miller's daughter Teresa in the day leading up to the Cuman invasion and what led her to saving Henry from Runt. She had a pretty eventful day full of learning swordplay from Henry, breaking into Matthias's house with a newfound lockpicking skill, killing a wild dog with a bow, and wandering around through a mineshaft in search of the King's Silver. Honestly, she's a lot cooler than Henry in the day leading up. When her father tries to marry her off to a rich old man in Tobias Fafar, she decides that, well, she'd rather not, and avoids the dance she was supposed to attend with him, which her father informs her ain't gonna fly. And she'll be attending his next dance the next night, or else. Fortunately for her, rather than having to marry an old man, she'll simply have to watch almost all of her family members die and her city be burned to the ground, which I'm sure is exactly what she was hoping for. After a distraction from Henry and a slightly more violent than intended escape into the hills, you'll find an unguarded mine entrance along with a few of your friends and the last of your family and an injured Samuel. Because he's in no condition to move, Teresa decides to stay behind and take care of him when the rest of the group makes a nighttime escape to Talmberg. His wounds are severe, but Teresa knows enough to be able to treat him, which means you'll spend some time searching around the countryside in the dark for the supplies you'll need to treat him, while fighting off multiple Cumans along the way, and even finishing off one of your wounded neighbors. Even with basically unleveled sword skills, being able to block shots long enough for your dog Tinker to grab a hold of the enemy, allowing you to get in some free shots, makes you surprisingly effective in combat. I'm admittedly a bit torn about this, because this could have been a couple hours the developers could force you into your first real state of vulnerability in a dozen hours, but I probably would have just been annoyed by it, so it's a wash for me. You can be vulnerable if you want to. It's a choice. I'm okay with that. After gathering supplies, you'll go back to treat Samuel and preserve the last of your family. Oh shit. I didn't read far enough ahead. Yo, sorry man, he's dead as fuck. Oof. The next morning, you'll wake up with the objective to see if anyone's inside the castle walls is alive, but you'll be given the opportunity to help several people outside the walls first. You'll help in 4 areas, doing things such as clearing a straggler out of the way so a woman can escape, helping a guy break into his own house just to get jumped by a thief who thought I was going to put up with his shit on today of all days, to finding a woodcutter's axe in a bid to snap him out of his crippling fear, allowing his escape, and finally choosing that one guy's dead wife. God, I really hope you guys get that joke or you're going to think I'm a horrible human being. Finally, you'll head into the castle walls where we'll see what led to Teresa saving Henry's life, repaying his earlier actions. Admittedly, there is also another section to A Woman's Lot that sucks and involves Johanka, but I'm writing the script and I decided that it doesn't merit my time to talk about, so moving on. The next expansion, and one I'm rather fond of for its simplicity, is the Band of Bastards. As a response to the violence on the road, Sir Radzig will call in a favor with an old friend and his mercenary band, having them patrol the countryside, with you sent along to act as a guide and act as Radzig's agent to keep an eye on them. It's your pretty average group with your witty archer and swindler, the young gun, the bickering brothers, and the strong silent types. Also, of course, when you get there, you'll be tested against one of their men to prove you're strong enough to ride along with them, but by the time you get to this DLC being unlocked in the game, you should be plenty leveled up to deal with him. You'll ride out on several patrols with Kuno's band, uncovering information that a rival of Sir Radzig is behind the unrest in the region, but when he refuses to play by their rules, you're sent out on more patrols, some more successful than others. You do get to know the gang pretty well, as you'll spend one night post-raid in good cheer as you can hang out with most of the band, drinking, telling stories, playing dice, or having a friendly little scrap. Unfortunately, when you're sold out and ambushed, you have to hunt down the traitor before having one last showdown with Hagentul and his merry band of assholes, which can actually go more than one way, some of which more ideal than others. But if it evolves into full-scale combat, it'll be simultaneously the best and worst fight in the game, depending on your goals and how much you care about achievements. Overall, the quest provides some great chances at combat and an enjoyable enough story to fill in the gaps between. Next up, we have the only DLC that's just about fun. Even if it's a bit of work involved in Sir Han's amorous adventures, you'll follow the young Lord Capon in his quest to woo the Butcher's daughter. You go through a bunch of drama to get there, but this is all that's really important about this quest.
Gentle night, why linger on? I yearn thus for my love so long. Without her words to still my breast, who shall set my soul to rest?
Gentle night, why linger on? I earned this from my love so long. Whip out your worthy silky breasts. Who shall suck my salty bits?
No!
Enough said? Lastly, we have what's the biggest expansion in From Ashes. Sir Divish will reward your loyal service by appointing you Bailiff of Privoslavitz and letting you pay for everything out of pocket. Wait, what? Okay, so admittedly, up front, it's a pretty raw deal, but I'm a sucker for base building, and it does provide you a new and different challenge that will run you through a ton of obstacles that, should you overcome, will lead you with a heavy purse and a sense of accomplishment. It's a project that's likely to take you quite a chunk of time and effort to complete, as you'll have the ruined area, and alongside your locator Marius, clear and rebuild the whole thing. Up front, the workers will require money, and the lack of income means you'll be responsible for providing their wages, especially difficult if you come in early and poor. I would recommend at least having 15,000 groshans stacked away, if not far more than that. I think I came in with 30 on my later playthroughs, and I was still kind of struggling. You'll also be responsible for arranging supplies like stone, grain, and charcoal, along with again paying for it as you can't build without it. For me, it meant tracking down every bandit, brigand, and cumin band from the countryside and selling their ears and armor to keep up for the village. But as you choose what to build and when to build it, usually paying yourself, you can start to generate revenue from places like the tavern, bakery, and general store. Here's the thing, there's plenty of guides out there on what stores to build and how to optimize it for the best cash flow, but here's how I see it. Nothing you do is going to make the upfront cost any cheaper, and by the time you're done, there's going to be nothing you need money for anymore, so just build what you want and have a good time. You'll have 3 simple goals to hit that'll mark the quest as done: repair and renew the church, ensure sufficient income, and ensure housing for the villagers. By the time you're done, you'll be working out in your own personal guardhouse and throwing dice in the tavern, which makes me think it's all worth it. Not to mention raking in the dough when you return from time to time. In terms of time spent, it'll likely be the biggest expansion in the game for you, and I highly recommend it. Overall, the DLC in the game simply didn't miss for me, and if you're enjoying the game, hop on it. There's no reason not to.
You're doing well, son.
Warhorse Studios did what I think all the greats do in taking a shot high above their station, especially in a first release. They created something that, while certainly rough around the edges, stands up to most AAA releases, at least in terms of the content that you get inside the game. They created a world that feels big and alive and, above all else, dangerous. I know I keep harping on it, but something so unique in a single-player experience to feel vulnerable as a high-level character with all the best gear in the game, it's something incredibly rare, and honestly, I can't think of a game I've personally played that replicates the feeling, although games I haven't played like Stalker do come to mind. I call these videos spotlights, not reviews, because I only feel like bringing you games I feel like are worth talking about, and I usually have very little negative to say, but I feel like I should be open and honest about a couple of the issues that I have with this game, even if they don't keep me from repeat playthroughs. Here's my specs for my PC when I did most of my recordings, and for my current system, which I've been using to grab things I missed in my initial sessions. It isn't the biggest or best machine in the world, but I think we can easily call it high-end, especially considering this game came out in 2018. I play at 1440p high, HD textures disabled, and as you can see, even when I was on a 2080, which wasn't out until 6 months after this game released, the frame rate could seriously tank in large battles, especially at night as it struggles to render the moving light sources torches provide. Even now with a 3080 in mostly the same settings, my performance is about equal to what I get in Cyberpunk 2077, which is obviously notoriously demanding. This falls to the fact that a small studio running a difficult engine like CryEngine just can't optimize a game to the degree of studios 5 times their size. This shouldn't be a turnoff, as they've done tons of work over the years, and adjusting settings to your system will leave it perfectly serviceable, but I do recommend you take a look at the system requirements before purchasing. A lack of top-tier polishing aside, I'm amazed what Warhorse Studios was able to accomplish, and I think it's worth your time to give it a go. From the wild side missions you'll get involved in, like drinking with a priest, dressing as a cumin, or chatting with a horse, yeah, I said that right. There's rarely a dull moment in the game that you can feel was filled with so much passion for the project. The combat, at least for swordplay, is second to none for me, with everything from the violent madness of wading into a crowd with a mace to the elegant and technical battles you can get involved in when you have a longsword in your hand. It's all just a joy to play. Is this game perfect? No, far from it. But if you've gotten this far in the video and you think you'll like it, I promise you, you will. I'm putting my name on this one. Skip the next big budget release and give a small studio your support when they deserve it. I might give this game a full breakdown one day, but for now, this is looking a little long, and I think it's best left where we are to avoid becoming unapproachably long. As much as it concerns me, I think I'll be giving Alpha Protocol a go next, and I know that's going to take a long time because that game is a mess. In a good way. So expect some movie reviews and maybe some bad Resident Evil 6 gameplay with Ryan while you wait. Outros are hard, so this is where I'll be leaving you. Thank you so much for getting to the end. I appreciate it, guys. This is Purple signing off. Have a wonderful night, and always remember to smile.